North Korea issued another threat today. It's now warning tourists and foreign companies to leave South Korea, telling them to get out because the peninsula is on the eve of nuclear war. It appears unlikely, experts say, Pyongyang will launch a direct attack, but there are signs it's planning another missile test, maybe as early as tomorrow. Japan is within range of North Korea's ballistic missiles, and it isn't taking any chances. It has deployed more Patriot air defense batteries, both on warships and in central Tokyo, as well as just outside the city. The tensions on the Korean peninsula we turn to now with foreign affairs analyst Eric Margolis. He's watching things closely, and we're happy to be able to tap into his expertise this morning. Thanks for being here. Why don't we start with today's developments? I just outlined them, the warning from North Korea to anyone, tourists and companies and their employees in the south, to get out because on the, quote, on the eve of nuclear war. Are we?
I don't think so. And the thing is, if you look at shoppers in downtown Seoul and the department stores, they don't think so either. That's an important sign. It's usual North Korean bombast. But there's a lot more of it, and it is alarming because it keeps coming.
Well, I was going to say, yesterday I heard a U.S. former ambassador to South Korea say this is the annual hissy fit from the North, prompted by the U.S. military and the exercise in the region. But it seems that it's different this time.
The intensity is much higher. The threats are much more acute. But what we haven't seen are any troop movements, which is interesting. Though I add that the North Korean armed forces are positioned so that they can make a surprise attack very quickly from their standing positions, as the Egyptians did on the Suez Canal in 1973.
So those telltale signs of actually the military readiness. Now, there was some confusion yesterday because one of the South Korean government officials said, yes, they'd seen some movement that suggested that, to be contradicted by another defense ministry spokesperson saying, no, we haven't seen signs. So it is hard, though, to tell whether there has been that kind of movement you're pointing to.
It certainly is, Heather. What amazes me every time I go to South Korea, and I've been with the government, the intelligence service, up on the DMZ,
in fact, we have pictures of that. So as you're talking, Eric, let me just interrupt. We'll show those as you're talking. There you are just last year filming right in the DMZ. And in fact, you got right into North Korea.
That's right. Right behind me are the hills where the North Koreans have in place up to 11,000 pieces of artillery pointing at Seoul. The amazing thing is that the South Korean intelligence service doesn't know what's going on in North Korea. Nobody does. The CIA doesn't know either. So it's very inscrutable and dangerous as a result.
And the wild card now is the still new leader, Kim Jong-un, just 30, untested. How much does his leadership add to the volatility?
He's certainly adding some testosterone into the confrontation. He's trying to emulate his grandfather, Kim Il-sung. You can watch the poses that he takes, the heroic poses. He has his relatives. And he has the senior military command who are around him, so he's not alone in doing this. But he's trying to challenge the equally new leader of South Korea, President Park, who is the first female leader. And she is reacting overly strongly in this way, in an uncompromising way, which raises the risks a bit. And, of course, there are new leaders in Japan and China, too. So this is the first day at school.
Bring in China, because obviously how it responds is very important, as North Korea is one of those rare allies. China, we had over the weekend, saying that no country has the right to add chaos for selfish reasons, and a reiteration of that tomorrow, just this morning, that it does not want chaos in the Korean peninsula. Ban Ki-moon this morning has said to North Korea's neighbors and allies to please exert your influence. Does China have influence on this young North Korean leader?
Well, it certainly does, because China supplies all of North Korea's oil and a lot of its food and medicinal products. So the Chinese, and traditionally the Chinese have great moral influence over Korea, which they regard as a younger son. The Koreans have to listen to the Chinese. China is annoyed by all this squabbling going on and this fracas in Korea. However, China does not want to see the North Korean regime overthrown and replaced by a South Korean government, or worst of all, to see American military bases move into North Korea.
Well, that's the other factor in all of this, the U.S. How do you think the U.S. is responding thus far?
Well, the U.S. Was too hard, in my view, on North Korea. After North Korea's nuclear tests, it then staged these annual war exercises, which everyone here ignores but makes them crazy in North Korea. They simulate an invasion of North Korea by U.S., South Korean, and now Australian troops. U.S. B-52 heavy bombers and then B-2 stealth bombers flew within 30 kilometers of the North Korean border, simulating bomb runs, including one to decapitate the North Korean leadership. So the North Koreans just exploded this time and said no more.
Let me ask you finally, for this conversation, we'll doubtless have more. You said South Korea, strong response, North Korea, strong rhetoric. Everybody ratcheting things up. What if somebody miscalculates? What if somebody makes a mistake?
Heather, that's exactly the question. Wars often begin by miscalculation. And what I find very interesting about this is that Kim Jong-un has climbed out on a limb. And he's beating the war drums and making, okay, but what does he do next? He's running out of threats to make. And for dictators, it's very difficult, because if you create a crisis and then you're left, standing there by yourself, you don't know how to back out of a crisis. It can be very dangerous for their leadership, because they can be overthrown. That's why Hitler refused to withdraw from Stalingrad. Loss of prestige, and young Kim is facing this problem.
Okay, we'll see whether the talk of missile test, perhaps as early as tomorrow, comes to fruition, and what that brings about, if there is an action and a response, and we'll certainly speak to you again on that. Thanks so much. Eric Margolis here in studio with us this morning.